For years, Barron Trump has stayed mostly quiet, existing in the shadows of one of the most controversial families in history. But now, the youngest Trump is stepping forward, ready to break his silence, and what he shares might change the way you view Donald Trump forever. What was life really like inside the Trump dynasty? What secrets, struggles, and realities did Barron witness while the world's eyes were fixed on his father? This isn't just a story about privilege. It's an intimate look at the man behind the legend, seen through the eyes of the son who experienced it all firsthand. Father and son, a complicated relationship. To most people, Donald Trump was a larger-than-life figure, a businessman, a president, and a constant headline maker. But to Barron, he was simply dad, and that role carried a unique complexity that few outsiders could truly grasp. From the outside, many assumed Barron lived a life of endless luxury, surrounded by fame, fortune, and power in golden towers. But behind closed doors, his relationship with his father was far more nuanced. Their bond was shaped by the same forces that made Donald Trump who he is: fierce ambition, pride, and a relentless drive to show strength. Yet it was also marked by moments of unexpected tenderness, deep pride, and genuine curiosity. Donald Trump rarely misses an opportunity to speak about Barron publicly, often highlighting his son's intelligence and sharp insights. In a recent high-profile interview, Trump shared how much Barron has influenced him, especially when it comes to navigating today's media landscape. "Barron knows all about you guys. He knows people I've never even heard of, like Aiden Ross. I'd ask who they are, and he'd tell me they're huge. You gotta listen to him. He's very smart," Trump said, clearly impressed by his son's media savvy. He admitted that platforms like podcasts and TikTok were unfamiliar territory until Barron encouraged him to dive in, advice that turned out to be absolute ratings gold, according to senior advisor Jason Miller. "Every recommendation Barron made ended up breaking the internet and bringing in massive ratings. He's done an incredible job," Miller added, emphasizing Barron's quiet but powerful influence behind the scenes. This dynamic reveals a lesser-known side of Donald Trump, a proud father who increasingly depends on his son's intellect and instincts to stay relevant in the fast-changing world of digital media. Barron isn't just a trusted advisor. He's a vital connection to the younger, tech-savvy generation Trump needs to reach. But with his father's praise comes its own pressures. Barron has long understood that being admired by Donald Trump means carrying high expectations. Standing 6 feet 9 inches tall, Barron often draws attention at public events, where Donald Trump proudly speaks of his son's intelligence, moments that frequently go viral online. Beneath all the mixed praise and fanfare lies a deeper reality. Barron has grown up alongside the evolving image of his father. He has witnessed Donald Trump as the relentless showman, strategist, and self-promoter, but also as the father who deeply values his son's advice and perspective. For Barron, this relationship has always been a delicate balance between genuine affection and the awareness that both love and legacy run deeply through their family. Those close to Barron describe him as thoughtful and perceptive, noting how he has long understood the fine line between personal connection and the weight of public expectations. To Barron, the extraordinary achievements that define his father's life come with their own costs. Grueling hours, the relentless glare of the spotlight, and the steep price of maintaining an unshakable identity. So he remains a keen observer of both the man and the myth, absorbing lessons that will shape how he carves out his own identity in the shadow of one of the most divisive figures of our time. The private side of Donald. To the world, Donald Trump has always been a master of spectacle. Whether standing behind a podium, sitting in a gold-adorned office, or making a grand entrance at one of his properties, he knew how to capture attention. But behind that polished, larger-than-life persona was a private man few truly saw. A man Barron Trump came to understand in ways no journalist, biographer, or critic ever could. The Donald off-camera was full of contradictions, fiercely protective yet emotionally distant, driven by image yet vulnerable to insecurities hidden from public view. Barron had access to moments that shattered the public's carefully crafted perception. He witnessed nights when Donald, away from the cameras, questioned whether a deal was truly good enough or worried about how headlines would portray him. Barron saw the man often hailed as unshakable show, fleeting glimpses of doubt, frustration, and even fear of failure. These moments revealed a man who thrived on confidence, but wrestled with self-doubt when the spotlight faded. One thing Barron noticed was how deeply loyalty mattered to his father. For Donald Trump, loyalty wasn't just a principle. It was the lens through which he judged every relationship. Barron saw how this influenced who his father trusted and how swiftly that trust could turn to cold dismissal. Staff, friends, and business partners who let Donald down often found themselves cut off with surprising speed. To Barron, this was a double-edged lesson. It showed him the importance of standing by those you care about, but also how fragile even the closest relationships could be in his father's world. Behind the bravado, there were quiet personal routines and vulnerabilities. Barron observed how Donald kept small rituals to steady himself, late-night calls with trusted advisors, poring over newspapers, or simply standing silently, looking out at the city he spent a lifetime trying to conquer. On camera, the world saw a man always charging forward, always projecting strength. But Barron came to understand that those private moments were often filled with reflection, sometimes regret, sometimes calculation, but always an unspoken acknowledgement that being Donald Trump was far from easy. Perhaps most captivating to Barron was watching how his father handled emotions. Publicly, Donald was known for fiery speeches, sharp comebacks, and bold proclamations. Behind closed doors, Donald Trump was much more reserved emotionally. Barron noticed that his father rarely spoke about fear, sadness, or doubt. Instead, most of his energy was spent on maintaining control. It was almost as if the man who could electrify arenas with his voice held back completely in private, even with his own son. This left Barron with plenty to reflect on, revealing a deeply complex and multifaceted man, often very different from the public image his father worked so hard to project. These were the private moments, beyond the cameras and spotlights, away from the showman, the fighter, and the deal-maker. Barron saw the man carrying the weight of those roles long after the audience was gone. As Barron matured, his understanding grew of how much this hidden side influenced the decisions, alliances, and conflicts that would ultimately shape the Trump legacy. Inside the Trump Empire. To the outside world, the Trump Empire looks like a towering symbol of power, wealth, and influence. A sprawling web of hotels, golf courses, properties, and deals stretching from New York all the way to Dubai. The gleaming marble of Trump Tower, the vast fairways of Trump National Golf Club, and the massive golden signs bearing his name are all trophies of success Donald Trump proudly flaunted. But growing up within that empire, Barron saw a very different story beneath the glittering surface. He understood the complicated machinery that kept it running, and the toll it took on everyone involved. From a young age, Barron was familiar with the inner workings of the Trump brand. While tourists admired the marble floors and crystal chandeliers, Barron navigated those same halls fully aware of the pressures behind them. He observed his father obsessing over every little detail, from the perfect angle of a logo to the thread count on hotel linens. To outsiders, this might seem like mere perfectionism. To Barron, it was a sign of the heavy burden Donald Trump carried, knowing that even the smallest flaw or missed opportunity could chip away at the empire his father had spent decades building. Barron also learned that the empire was built on more than just deals. It was built on image. His father's success wasn't just about square footage or stock values. It was about headlines, TV ratings, and controlling public perception. Barron witnessed the endless meetings with publicists, lawyers, and advisors, all focused on crafting the Trump narrative, turning setbacks into comebacks, criticism into motivation, and rivals into stepping stones. The empire was as much myth as it was real estate, with Donald Trump as both its creator and fiercest protector. Throughout his presidency, under intense scrutiny over his business dealings, Trump's inner circle worked tirelessly to fend off accusations of wrongdoing. In May, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt addressed these concerns directly. "I think everybody, the American public, believes it's absurd to suggest that this president is profiting off the presidency. He was incredibly successful before giving it all up to serve the country." For Barron, these statements were more than mere talking points. They were part of a relentless fight to defend not just a fortune, but a family legacy constantly under the world's watchful eye, open to judgment and speculation at every turn. What struck Barron most was how personal business always was for his father. Deals weren't just transactions, they were battles. Every negotiation tested strength. Every victory brought fierce pride. And every loss, no matter how small, cut deeper than anyone outside the family could understand. Barron saw Donald celebrate wins with intense joy, but he also witnessed the sleepless nights, the tense phone calls, and the quiet moments when the weight of those battles pressed heavily on his father's shoulders. The aura of invincibility gradually faded as Barron witnessed the very human vulnerabilities behind the Trump empire. He saw past the facade, executives working tirelessly late into the night to close deals, staff ensuring the properties ran smoothly, and loyal supporters who stood by his father through scandals and victories alike. With his own eyes, Barron observed the toll it took on his father. The relentless grind, the constant public scrutiny, and the unyielding pressure to stay ahead. As he grew older, he began to wonder, when does an empire stop serving the man who built it and start consuming him instead? A life in the shadows. While much of the world watched Donald Trump's rise in the spotlight, Barron Trump experienced it from the quietest corners of the stage. As the youngest son of one of modern history's most polarizing figures, Barron spent much of his life in the background, present during pivotal moments but mostly silent, his expressions analyzed, and his words rarely heard beyond close circles. To the public, he was simply the boy standing next to a father who commanded attention. But Barron's reality was far more complex, a silent witness to history unfolding, while simultaneously trying to carve out his own identity beneath the harsh glare of that spotlight. From campaign rallies to the White House, Barron was there, watching closely. He saw his father deliver passionate speeches, face harsh criticism, and handle moments of both triumph and scandal with unwavering defiance. Where Donald Trump seemed to thrive on attention, drawing it in and using it as both shield and weapon, Barron tended to pull away. Those close to him describe him as observant, thoughtful, and unusually mature for his age. He wasn't just watching his father, he was watching the world's reaction. How allies quickly became adversaries. How praise could turn into condemnation with a single headline or tweet. It was a first-hand lesson in loyalty, power, and the unpredictable nature of public opinion. The isolation that came with his position was profound. Despite growing up amid iconic places, from the gleaming marble halls of Trump Tower to the storied rooms of the White House, Barron's world was surprisingly small. Security measures, strict protocols, and the constant threat of public scrutiny tightly controlled his every move. Building friendships was a challenge. Normal teenage experiences, like going to the mall, attending a party, or simply walking down the street unnoticed, were rare privileges. For Barron, the price of living so close to power was an invisible barrier separating him from the world outside his family's orbit. But within this insulated environment, he learned valuable lessons on how to navigate the currents of his father's complex world. Barron witnessed the deals made, the rivals outmaneuvered, and every word and gesture carefully calculated for maximum impact. He saw the underlying tensions, the moments of doubt, frustration, and fatigue that never made it to the surface. Observers have noted that Barron mirrors his father in some ways. Though, unlike Donald Trump's trademark bluster and bravado, Barron shows a more subtle vulnerability. Through these silent observations, Barron came to understand the heavy cost of living in constant conflict, always needing to be on, and feeling the loneliness that often accompanies great power. These experiences shaped his views on strength, loyalty, and what it truly means to carry on a family legacy. Now, as Barron moves into adulthood, the question remains, will he follow in his father's footsteps or forge a path uniquely his own, one shaped by what he's witnessed but guided by his own voice? Donald and the power of image. Few figures in recent history have grasped and exploited the power of image quite like Donald Trump. Long before his presidency, Trump mastered the art of controlling how he was perceived, crafting a persona that fused wealth, toughness, and an aura of invincibility into a brand as instantly recognizable as any corporate logo. His rise through business, reality TV, and politics wasn't just about what he accomplished, but about how he shaped people's perceptions of him. Trump's talent for image-making began in New York's ruthless real estate scene. From gold-trimmed interiors to towering skyscrapers stamped with his name, every choice seemed engineered for maximum visibility. His fame on The Apprentice turned him from a local magnate into a household name. The catchphrase, "You're fired," wasn't just a slogan. It was a statement of dominance, blurring the line between reality and performance. Donald Trump didn't just sell buildings or TV shows, he sold Donald Trump. This mastery of image became his most powerful weapon once he entered politics, transforming him from a businessman turned reality star into a political force that defied conventional norms. Unlike traditional candidates, Trump didn't rely on endorsements from party insiders, established political machines, or think tanks to gain traction. His brand was his campaign, overshadowing all else. Every rally, every off-the-cuff tweet, every headline, whether glowing or scathing, reinforced a single message. Here was the outsider, the fighter, the man who couldn't be controlled or tamed by the system. People didn't just vote for Trump as a politician. They embraced him as a symbol of rebellion, a living embodiment of defiance against an establishment they believed had failed them. But what Barron witnessed, often away from public view, was the intense, unending effort required to maintain that image. Beneath the spontaneous persona was meticulous planning and a vigilance so intense it left little to chance. The myth of Trump as the outsider wasn't a happy accident. It was carefully and almost obsessively cultivated. Behind the bold slogans, dramatic gestures, and choreographed spectacles was a relentless focus on optics. The Trump team worked tirelessly to steer media coverage, manage appearances, and turn every misstep into proof of strength or cunning. Even in moments of defeat, scandal, or setback, these weren't seen as losses, but as chances to strengthen the image of Trump as the ultimate survivor, the man who always bounced back, turning every attack into fuel for his fight. This wasn't just about defending Donald Trump, the person. It was about protecting the myth he created and sold to millions. The myth of the invincible winner who never gave up, never showed weakness, and never admitted mistakes. For Barron, growing up under the shadow of that myth meant realizing at an unusually young age that perception wasn't just a part of politics, it was a form of power itself. Public image could protect, elevate, and inspire, but in the wrong hands or during vulnerable moments, it could also become the most dangerous weapon of all. If this deep look into Barron Trump's hidden world gave you a fresh perspective on Donald Trump, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next big reveal. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the world is finally ready to hear Barron's side of the story? And check out the video on your screen for more untold truths about the figures you thought you knew.